Very glad to welcome you all for this very technical session on circulating ecological sphere and ecosystem. For the rapporteuring, we have Mr. Jiten Kumar, who will be joining us. So without further ado, let's get into the main technical session. Please help me in introducing our co-chair, Mr. Tetsuo Kuyama. Mr. Kuyama obtained his master's degree from Graduate School of Engineering, University of Tokyo, after serving as an engineer for the Nippon Koi Corporation Limited, dealing with environmental impact assessment (EIA) for development projects in both Japan and developing countries. He started working for the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies (IGES) in Japan as a water expert. He has worked in Natural Resources and Ecosystem Services Unit for IGES for 12 years. Since 2018, he became the director of Bangkok Regional Center, as well as he has managed Asia Pacific Adaptation Information Platform (APPLAT) capacity building. So welcome, Chair. Next up, we have our second co-chair for this very session. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Bijon Kumer Mitra, who is the Senior Water Resource Specialist at the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies in Japan. He has more than 15 years of experience in the field of water resource management. His research interests include water energy, food climate nexus, climate change adaptation in water, water environment management, and circulating an ecological sphere approach for collective resilience. He uses more quantitative assessment framework to assess the natural resource allocation trade-offs, aiming to provide guidance for optimal decision making. So before I hand over this session to the respective chairs, there are some key points to be made. The Zoom session is currently being recorded. The recorded session will be made available on request. Please mention to us if you have any objection or so. The technical session chair will be announcing the presentations and respective presenters. We have 10 presentations lined up, and please be noted the pre-recorded videos will be played from the AIT site itself. We will be having the discussion and Q&A session at the end. After all 10 presentations are done, the participants can post their questions and queries in the chat box itself. And I'd like to request the presenters to please keep track of the chat box and answer the questions that have been directed to you. If not, we will be having a quick discussion at the end of this very session. So I'd like to hand over the session to respected co-chairs. Over to you, professors. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your introduction. My name is Tetsuo Kuyama, Regional Director of the Bangkok Regional Center of the Institute for the Global Environmental Strategy. I'm very happy to organize this technical session on the circulating ecological sphere and ecosystems. As moderator explained before, so we have a 9 presentation by pre-recorded video. At first, I will introduce the name of the speaker and also the title of the presentation. Then video will be started. Okay, so let's start the presentation. At first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Bijon Kumar Mitra, IGES, and title is the application of circular and ecological sphere approach for translating global goals to local action.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for introducing me with the participants of this session. On behalf of our team, I'd like to present the application of circulating and ecological sphere approach for translating global goals to local actions. I would like to introduce 3 cases from Japan in my presentation. Yesterday, some of you might attended the plenary session where Professor Takeuchi, President of IGS, introduced the circulating and ecological sphere concept in his presentation. There are 4 major global agendas that have been approved by the global leaders. Paris Agreement, it is about climate change mitigation and adaptation. Second one is about sustainable development goals. Third one is about conventional biological biodiversity. And fourth one is about Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction. To achieve these many goals and targets, independent and isolated actions is not a realistic option. Instead, we need to take integrated actions and that need to be implemented locally. The circulating and ecological sphere concept emerges as a holistic, integrated approach that was framed based on integration of concept of low carbon society, resource circulation, and living in harmony with nature. The concept put emphasis on the bridging of urban-rural system. The urban-rural partnership aims to have a decentralized and resilient society through optimum use of local resources. CS approach has wider and flexible scope depending on local needs. That includes it can support local economy revitalization. It can be used for realizing decarbonized society. It can be applied for resilient society, and it can also apply for post-COVID green recovery. In this slide, I'd like to introduce Japanese approach to implement CES. Establishment of a regional platform is an important step. It brings key stakeholders of urban and rural region in common platform. The platform connect people, goods, and money. Actions of the regional platform also has synergistic relationship with national government policies and supporting schemes. Now I would like to introduce case 1 that is about application of CES for water environment conservation in Kanagawa Prefecture. Kanagawa Prefecture is the second largest prefecture of Japan in terms of number of population. And if you see 60% of the population of Kanagawa live in Yokohama City and Kawasaki City. And the water supply for this Yokohama City and Kanagawa City fully depend on the rural area where the water catchment area is located. And the main concern is the management of the catchment area that located in this rural part. And 70% of this catchment area is private owned forest. So any mismanagement or weak management of the forest area that actually lead to the decrease of groundwater level, increased disaster risk, as well as decreased water retention function of the forest. And of course, it also lead to degradation of water quality. That's why the Kanagawa Prefecture introduced a water environment conservation scheme, and it collect tax from the resident, and that tax money is used for the management of the forest area in the rural area. On the other hand, Kanagawa Prefecture government also encourage private companies to extend their support to manage the forest area in the rural area. These are the urban-rural partnership that help to improve the water catchment area management that located in the rural area. Now, what are the key factors of success of Kanagawa water conservation program? If you see that these are the key factors. First one is the citizen consultation from the very beginning, and also involvement of the civil society in the committee of this scheme, and arrange demonstration field visit for the citizens to show the projects that have been implemented using the tax money, and also encourage private sectors to partnership for forest management, and of course the support the tax this financial support to the upstream prefecture also important. Now, second case is about the urban-rural collaboration for groundwater management in Kumamoto. And Kumamoto city is fully dependent on the groundwater. And the groundwater recharge area actually located in the mountainous area near to Mountain Aso. And it takes, if you see, groundwater recharge take about 20 years actually. So without having the appropriate amount of groundwater recharge, there is increased risk of the water security for Kumamoto city. That's why Kumamoto city actually bring all neighboring towns in the common platform and signing a groundwater conservation agreement. This is one of the example of the incentive mechanism for practicing the groundwater recharge. It is the incentive is given to the farmers for retaining water in their paddy field for different number of days, and the farmers will receive incentive like for 30 days they receive 11,000 yen per 1,000 square meter land area. And the third case is about the Hokusetsu Satoyama CES model that is in Hyogo Prefecture. So this case actually tried to maximize optimum use of available renewable energy resources that include solar energy, that include wood biomass, that include livestock manure, and that renewable energy used for local transport system, used for local food production and conservation, and also support the urban farming. And this also promote the ecotourism in that area, and ultimately it contribute to the economic revitalization of the area. Now, what are the key lessons from Japan cases? The local actions towards sustainable development and resilient society should be planned and implemented beyond the administrative boundary level. And that's why it is necessary to introduce circulating and ecological sphere concept. Need to strengthen partnership with the neighboring towns or villages to explore and to optimum use of the natural resources, that means ecosystem services. And in terms of governance, it is important to get involved multi-stakeholder in planning and implementation of the any program of the sustainable development. And entire system should be transparent to the people, so people will have build trust on the proper use of their tax money for the natural resource management. And finally, one is the need to introduce incentive mechanism to encourage collaboration. So this is all of my presentation. I would be happy to receive your question after we complete all presentation of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mitra, for introducing a Japanese example on the circulating ecological sphere model, and then providing the good 3 example of the local government to promote the rural-urban partnership. Thank you for your information presentation. Next presentation is the Dr. Web server and Alone, Thammasat University in Thailand. And title is the Building City Regions Sustainable and Resilience, Application of Circulation and Ecological Sphere Approach for Bridging the Urban and Rural System, a case study of Udon Thani City region, Thailand. Yeah, floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Vijay Pusabat from Thammasat University. I would like to present on how we apply CCS concept to the city of Udon Thani. Udon Thani faced several floodings and drought in the past, and in the future, they will face heavy rainfalls, which create flooding areas in the north part of cities, and also they will face higher number of hotter days in the future as well. We use several activities to research about CES, but I would like to present on a household survey. And you'll hear later on from my colleagues about ecosystem service modeling. For the method of household selections, we co-select with our local stakeholders, and we would like to select households that locate on the same ecological corridors. And you can see these are the location of households selections near from the city center to Hoi Luang reservoirs. We collect about 571 household totals. So within the first 5 kilometers is urban area. 5 to 10 is peri-urban area, and the outer rings are rural areas. In terms of households, resource consumption and perceptions, we would like to understand the linkage between urban and rural area in terms of water resources, food, commuting pattern, and dependency between urban and rural areas. We also illustrate this result in terms of social network analysis by understanding location, distance, and frequencies. This is a result of urban households. We conduct about 150. So you can see the number of people that refer that depends these resources in urban areas. And these are the ranking from 1 to 5, 5 is the highest. So most of them refer that they depend on resources in the urban area itself with a quite a high level of dependencies, except tourism. And in the case of food, they also refer to food for consumption, not production, so they can go to buy food in the local markets. These are social network analysis. As you can see, all of them understand that water resource is located in a rural area, which is Hoi Luang reservoirs. And for the case of food, they also travel nearby within the city itself for food for consumption. And that's also the same for hospital. So they travel less than 5 kilometers and the expense is not more than 500 per time. And for agricultural areas, some of them may have some agricultural land outside the city center. When we compare with the answer from peri-urban households, you can see that most of them prefer that they depend on medical services, educations, and water supply investment and management in the urban areas. But for jobs, marketing for rural products, and investment for economic activities, they refer to both areas because some of them are farmers, some of them working in the local areas or even in city center. And for food, they refer to rural areas. These are the location of water supplies. Most of them know as well Hoi Luang is the same source. And food, this is the location of how they travels. And this is the location they travel for hospital. It's quite interesting to see the result from rural households. It shows that rural people quite self-reliant. They refer to all resources and activities in rural areas, both from like services and food and natural resources. Water location, they will not only refer to the big water reservoir of Hoi Luang, they also refer to smaller catchment area as well in the rural areas. And also for food, they refer to markets and local markets. And if they need to go to like bigger markets, central market to transport food for elsewhere, they have to go to the city center. And hospital, they very much travel locally, except that if they need to go to big hospital, they have to travel to city center. The last slide is about awareness and willingness to invest on natural resources. So in the case of urban households, they know that they use the same source of water supply same source as the rural people, and they understand that there are currently water issues in the forest and rural areas. They also think that increased water demand in the cities also create crisis situation in rural areas as well. They are also aware that rural areas are supplying food to urban areas, and they also think that urban areas must contribute for betterment for these forests and rural areas as well. Sorry. They start practicing water consumption as household levels and community levels. And this is very interesting when we ask about what type of development do you support. They think that they cannot just support the urban area itself, they have to support sustainable and rural areas together. In case of willingness to manage, most of them willing to take part in natural resource management activities and land conservations. And if not, they think that is a job of provincial work. And they also would like to contribute to urban farming, and they would like to seek for support who is already practicing, and also maybe some technical support as well. They are also willing to support urban farming in the rural area as well. So in terms of conclusions, it's quite clear that natural resource flow for both consumption and production between urban and rural areas is prominent. Urban areas are important source for public services and markets. Rural areas seem to be self-reliant, however may face possible risks for environmental change and urban expansion in new futures. There is need to invest on future analysis for land use change scenarios on food and water security. But it's quite clear that we have a lot of opportunities to create mutual perception of natural resource linkages, and also they're quite clear there's willingness to manage resource in all urban and rural areas to join, and possibility to develop both urban and rural partnerships for sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Malone, to introduce the very quite unique research output based on the case study of the Udon Thani, one city of the Thailand. I think we can understand the situation of the Udon Thani based on your result by using the dependency level to the urban area and rural area, and then we can understand the urban-rural relationship in Thailand. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. So next presentation, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rajashi Dusgupta, Institute for the Global Environment Strategy. His presentation title is the Mapping Ecosystem Service Across the Urban-Rural Gradient for the Disaster and Climate Resilience, a case study of Udon Thani, Thailand.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rajesh Gupta. So today I'll be talking about mapping ecosystem service across urban-rural gradient for disaster and climate resilience, a case study of Udon Thani, Thailand. So this is a joint project executed by IGS, my colleagues, and my colleagues from Thammasat University, Thailand. And in this study, we tried to understand the importance of a knowledge of ecosystem services that is available in the urban and peri-urban areas. So as you know that this COVID pandemic has taught us a great lesson of the problems in terms of the globalizations and depending on global supply and global supply chains for resilience. So in many cases, we understand that the linkages between larger cities and the global chains that failed. So to counter this and to make a more sustainable and inclusive development, the government of Japan, as you know, they launched a new concept called the Regional Circulating Ecological Sphere. So this concept is basically talks about resilient regions, and these resilient regions are basically and depends on the nature-based resilience. So here in this picture, you can see that how the cities and the peri-urban and the village areas are connected through multiple resources. For example, natural resources, materials, material resources, human resources, financial resources. But most importantly, the city regions, they do depend on depend on the ecosystem services, in particular food, water, energy. So these are very important for a city planner to understand that this connections between the villages and peri-urban landscapes and the urban cores. So another important part of this concept is that in the future we need to live in harmony with nature, and the nature-based resilience is the only way forward for disaster and climate change issues. Now, this is our study area. This is the Udon province of Thailand. So perhaps people sitting here or listening to this presentation are more knowledgeable about this study area. So in this study area, we have urban core. As you can see within this, there's the first circle, there's the urban core. And we have in each of the circle, it actually denotes 5-kilometer radius from the urban center. And so we have the final circle continues about 20-kilometer radius. And as you can see that this is a classic example where you have an urban center, and there are production landscapes accompanying these urban centers. So this is a little bit old map. This is from like 2008 map, but we tried to use this map for mapping the food production potential as well as the consumption potential. On the left hand, you can see the food production potential map. So this map shows you the current extent of food production within the 20-kilometer radius. So basically, we use some geospatial tools to quantify the maximum possible food production potential given the 27 land use. And in this land use, you can find that we have the maximum food production potential within the 20-kilometer radius is somewhere by 0.21 million metric ton food per year. And this includes about all the rice fields, the perennial crops, vegetations, vegetable gardens, and as well as orchards. So these are basically all the production units that can produce food for this region. And in the right hand side, you can see the calculated and based on the current demand, what are the demands in the field. So we calculated the population over there, and alongside like how much the population consume food. So as far the global reported standards, an average Thai person consume about 178 kg of rice per year, and on almost a similar quantity of vegetables and other things. So we took on a higher side of 200 kg per year alongside another 200 kg of vegetable, and we calculated this this entire kind of the phenomena of like how much the demand is of food in this particular area. Now, if we just try to plot it in a single curve, so it shows that we are having 4 zones, as any zone is defined by the 5-kilometer radius. And here you can see that in the zone 1, we have, of course, as you can understand, there's a high demand of food, but the production is very less. But if you see in the zone 2, zone 3, and zone 4, of course, the production is much higher and the consumption is less. So basically, what it denotes is that this region can depend on itself for food self-sufficiency. And we are also planning to run future simulations to understand that whether this curve is going to stay or it's some kind of resiliency loss in future. For example, if there is a population growth and there is a massive land use change because of urbanization, so we can actually calculate that how much food self-sufficiency, how much food resilience will go in future, and which are the zones which possibly are more critical. So we have a future plan to make a simulation at a much smaller areas, for example 1-kilometer zones, to understand that these are the zones where possibly there would be a lack of food or kind of excess of food depending on the land use changes. Similar to the food production potential, we also tried to map the water potential, water provisioning potential. And here you can see the map on the left hand side. We used a tool called INVEST. INVEST stands for the ecosystem service modeling, so integrated valuation for ecosystem services. So this we have used a tool called the annual water yield tool. So basically it calculates the surface water flow. That means the water which is available per pixel after the groundwater is recharged or the soil captures. So basically, it is we measure the surface flows, and here you can see that the higher green values shows a high level of flow, which means that these are the areas where you have water availability is very high. So basically, this map gives you an idea how much water is available, and it is derived from multiple auxiliary data. For example, we used the annual rainfall data, the evapotranspiration data, and a number of other data to create this map using this model. And on the right hand, we used a kind of proxy of 220 liter per capita per day consumption of an individual. So, and then we try to understand how much water demand can be made from the surface water. So, assuming that we do not touch the groundwater, and we can use or utilize the surface water in terms of meeting the water need. So, of course, as you can see here, that there is the yield very easily kind of satisfies the consumption demands, and but as you can understand that in future cases, this might not be the exact scenario, because as the land use classes changes, particularly when it is urbanized, so that then the water availability might go down. So basically this can give you a rough idea of the urbanization's problem and how this food self-sufficiency or water self-sufficiency can be achieved in future. So with this, I thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I look forward if there is some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajesh Gupta, for the introducing another approach, a very unique approach to identify the situation of the udon tani by using the analysis of the ecosystem services. This is very good example of the research. Thank you. So next speaker, I'd like to invite from Vietnam's Dr. Pham Phu Son Toan, the University of Da Nang. The title is "The Risk of Waste Crisis and Waste Management Solution in Hanoi and City Toward the Circulating and Ecological Sphere Approach." Yeah, presentation please.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lincoln from the University of Da Nang, University of Technology and Education, Vietnam. Today, it is my honor to present about our research, exploring the gaps and potentials of urban-rural linkage.
Professor, is this the one you announced? I think there was a bit of technical glitch, so I missed the presentation you mentioned.
Yes, the DRSD 21303 I mentioned.
Okay, Professor, let me just check. Sorry for the technical error. Just a minute.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lincoln from the University of Da Nang, University of Technology and Education, Vietnam. Today,
I think this is the presentation.
Noted, Professor. I will just share the screen. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lincoln from the University of Da Nang, University of Technology and Education, Vietnam. Today, it is my honor to present about our research, exploring the gaps and potentials of urban-rural linkage in Hanoi City, Vietnam. The main content of my presentation today is below. The first one is introduction. The next one is method. The first one is result, and the last one was conclusion. Now I will move to introduction. Speaking of the introduction, I would like to talk about Hoi An City. Hoi An City is a tourism city in the center of Vietnam, and Hoi An is famous for its ancient beauty, especially ancient houses, which were recognized as World Heritage by UNESCO. So the aim of this research is to understand and translate the urban-rural linkages within the defined corridor of the Hoi An City and determine suitable directions and integrated policies in agreement with CES principles for more sustainable development of Hoi An City. So in conducting this research, we use the methods below. The methodology that we use has 4 main stages. The first one is identifying the design. In this stage, we collected the GIS boundary of Hoi An City, and then we make buffering zone by ArcGIS 10.3 to make buffer zone 1, 2, and 3. So all of them combined with urban area were the research area In the next stage, we conducted an interview. So speaking of the conducting interview, then firstly, we go to the household and then we make a general description on interview, and then we also use a GPS logger for location of household interview, and then we conducted the direct interview based on the questionnaire. After that, we collect all the data and then we import it to GIS software. Here I use ArcGIS 10.3 software and Origins for data analysis. And then after analysis of the data, we exporting it to show the result through diagrams and figures. Next, I would like to talk about results. The first one is demographic characterizations in urban-rural distribution. So as you can see here that the number of people household in Hoi An research area. So the people by family has no differences between urban area, buffering zone 1, 2, and 3. However, the population density is a big gap between the urban area and the rural area. So speaking of the jobs and occupation, as you can see here that tourism and tourist commercial activities were the main careers of the urban area, I mean here Hoi An City. Meanwhile, agriculture was the main activity of the community living in the rural areas. And you can see too, on the right, the occupation and total household income in Hoi An and surrounding areas were completely different. And you can see that in the urban area, the income was higher and higher than other areas such as buffering zone 1, 2, or even 3. Next, I will talk about the education level of Hoi An City and surrounding areas. So the level of education in the urban area was higher than in the suburban, revealing the interaction between the education level and economic social condition. And next, I would like to talk about infrastructure and the gaps in urban-rural linkage development. So as you can see that, speaking of infrastructure conditions and dependent factors, as you can see that the urban only has had demand on food from the rural areas, but actually the food in Hoi An City, unfortunately, will not mainly come from its buffer zones, but from the other areas in the Vietnam, in Vietnam. So, and however, as you can see that the rural area, I mean here buffering zone, they are dependent to the rural areas for a lot of activities and items and other supplies too. And then looking at the skill and development infrastructure for economic growth and reduction of migration. And you can see that the people in the rural area, they commute to Hội City daily for work, or even some people, they commute to Dynasty. Maybe they could take 1 hour for commuting, but they have to because of the large amount of income compared to the work in their fatherland. So I make some conclusion. Speaking of the results, so I can see that building and implement urban-rural linkages provide important resources and opportunities for worker migration, trade, capital, and knowledge among urban-rural regions. Understanding of the people about the CES could improve the city's management system and sustainable development. And synchronous development is a key factor in promoting the linkages between urban and rural regions. So here we draw lessons. The rural and urban community needs to be understood as a cross-relational link. Poor urbanization establishments may have detrimental effects on both urban and rural societies. Initiatives and policies should aim at increasing rural-urban linkage, reducing undesirable effects, and increasing the advantage of urban development in rapidly increasing cities. And improving rural-urban linkage is an effective way to counterbalance climate change and the changing of urbanization in rapidly developing towns and cities. So, thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you for Dr. Con leading to introduce another case study in Vietnam to focus on the rural-urban relationship analysis. It is very informative information to the audience. Thank you. So next speaker, I'd like to invite from the National Institute of the Technology in India, Dr. Samir M. Deshuka Besara Baraya. The presentation title is the Circulating and Ecological Sphere Perspective for Nagpur region, India.
Okay, greetings of the day, all the dignitaries, eminent panelists, all the participants from across the world in this virtual meeting, ladies and gentlemen. Myself, Samir Deshkar from Vishweshwariya National Institute of Technology, Nagpur in India. What I will be presenting before you today is one of the case study that we carried out with regards to application of RCS concept. We tried to demonstrate it with the case study region of Nagpur metropolitan area in India. This case study was carried out in collaboration with the Keio University Japan and the IGES Japan. Let me give some clarifications regarding this study, that the study was conducted in the pre-COVID era, which means that most of the issues and the challenges that are identified in the study were relevant in the pre-COVID era. Many of these issues might have actually taken a different form in the post-COVID era. And since Nagpur was also one of the hotspots for the COVID, these issues have some of the issues have assumed even a greater significance, which were previously not identified to be of significance. So there might be some changes. The observations that I'm going to present here are in the pre-COVID era. And another thing is I would like to emphasize that the interdependencies between urban and the rural areas that we have been talking about, and that's the focus of the whole study also, was in the post-COVID era has emerged in a very different fashion. So many of the interlinkages that we had identified prior might again have gone under some kind of changes in terms of their magnitude, in terms of there could be new linkages that are evolved and emerged in this particular time of pandemics. So with these limitations, I would like all of you to please consider this study and allow me some time to share my screen. Okay, so the title of my paper that I'm presenting is the Regional Circulating and Ecological Sphere, the RCES perspectives over the Nagpur metropolitan area. As I mentioned, this study was carried out in collaboration with the Keio University and IGS in Japan. Now, a lot of discourse have been going around the urban-rural interdependencies and their interlinkages. There have been a lot of even guidelines also being formulated for channelizing this interrelationship, understanding them in a better perspective. There have been also a concept called as the alternative urbanizations and adaptive urbanizations, where we are trying to again channelize this kind of interrelationship between the rural and the urban from a collective resilience perspective. So a lot of problems that emerge in the urban areas might be affecting the rural, and in the same way, what happens in the rural areas affect urban areas in different magnitudes and different scales. The interdependencies that we often see are across the spatial scales. Also, we find there are variations. So between rural, extreme rural to rural, there are different interdependencies. Maybe most of the times they're for the ecological dependencies and the resources, say, for example, wetlands and watershed areas, etc. Between the rural and the peri-urban areas, again, there are different kind of interdependencies that are observed, which are mostly to do with the socio-economic welfare and those kind of facilities. This dependency also cuts across up to the urban areas also that we often observe. And between the peri-urban and the urban areas, we often see that these areas are interdependent mostly for their infrastructural demands. So when we talk of linkages and exploring this regional circulating ecological sphere concept particularly, we have to take into account that there will be variations into such circulating patterns or the circulating paths that we may be considering. So not everywhere we'll find that ecological elements are emphasized, and somewhere we need to have different linkages to be explored so that these concepts can be taken further. So, but optimizing this relationship is definitely a focus, and the CES offers an opportunity for towards these attempts that have been being taken for quite some time. Now, the case study area that we have selected is the Nagpur, which is right in the middle of India. It's also called as the the 0 mile point of India, from where the mapping actually had started. In the beginning, we studied all the natural features of the region, where we have the forest, the low-lying areas, the riverine plains, and the agricultural lands. All the resources were mapped. The key issues that are there were also highlighted, which are, again, as I mentioned, they are mostly relevant in the pre-COVID era. The water has been one of the major concern in the region because of the extreme summers that we have and the extreme rainfall also that we have. So managing water has been one of the great focus of the local authorities, and there are disparities now what we have seen between the rural and the urban area water demands and the distribution systems. What we selected were the extreme rural areas to urban areas. We categorized them into four different parts, and accordingly we selected different settlements along the corridor, the river corridor, and conducted the field studies. The major outcome that we could get out of this analysis, the flow analysis, are the interrelationship. As you can see, that we prepared different networks between different nodes that we were identified during the survey. They could be from rural settlements to agricultural lands, to the market, to the economy, the banking sector, and then coming to the urban area. So different sectors have been linking with different nodes in different ways. And this is what we major outcome of this particular study was. To reinforce these observations that where are these linkages possible and when the strengthening possible, we conducted different stakeholder consultations involving the local mayor of the mayor of the Nagpur city, the bureaucrats, the decision makers, educational institute, the villagers also, and all the other agencies which are involved in maintaining and managing the resources in the city of Nagpur. There are, of course, some major suggestions that came out of this consultation workshops. They were in terms of conservation and disaster risk reduction, public participation, and private partnerships are equally important. This is what was emphasized. During this consultation, different scales of partnerships also that, as you can see in this map, there are partnerships which are possible between rural to rural areas, between the extreme rural to rural, rural to rural, rural peri-urban to urban, and then there are partnerships which are feasible across the scales. These are also the 5 kind of entry points that were identified: coordination, stakeholder engagements, urban-rural partnerships, community awareness, and technological interventions, which are possible to be ingrained into the existing law and existing policies that we have for the urban development in the case of Nagpur. Thank you so much for your kind listening, and I'll be very happy if there are queries or if there are any suggestions from your side.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, for your nice presentation. We understand another example of the CCS approach by using the India. In addition to the scientific analysis, we found that you also did some social analysis like consultation meeting, and also to identify the scale of the partnership in the different location. This is also very interesting to us. Thank you for your presentation. Okay, next is the 6th presenter. I'd like to invite Dr. Priyanka Mitra, Keio University, Japan. His title is Capturing the Mutual Benefit through the Urban-Rural Partnership, a city regional perspective for collective security of food, energy, and water in the post-COVID-19 era. Dr. Priyanka, your presentation, please.
Dear panelists, all participants, all presenters, and everyone, good afternoon. I am Priyanka Mitra, and today I am here to present Capturing Mutual Benefits through Urban-Rural Partnership, a regional perspective for collective security of food, energy, and water in the post-COVID-19 era. Water, energy, and food comprise the fundamental elements for economic growth and development. These 3 elements play a vital role in all kinds of economic activities. Many commitments have been made towards achieving water, energy, and food security, but in Asia, millions of people lack water, energy, and food security. Around 8 billion of people lack access to safe drinking water. 1.3 billion have no access to modern form of energy, and about 8.8 billion live without adequate nutrition. In Asia, continuing growth of population, rapid urbanization, industrialization, change of lifestyle, and consumption pattern are creating immense pressure on these resources. And it is investigated that by 2030, water demand will be increased by 55%, energy demand will be increased by 80%, and food demand will be increased by 60%. And another issue is rapid urbanization. Urban areas around the world are witnessing remarkable transformations paralleled by a growing demand of natural resources. The urban area, which occupies only 2% land, is the home of more than 50% population, sharing 80% of regional GDP and shares 70% of electricity consumption. And till date, domestic water consumption has been increased by 600%, and industrial water consumption has been increased by 300% since 1950. Small urban area is not sufficient for basic resource. That means it requires supply from other region. And as current trends of development are putting pressure on natural resources, managing water, energy, and food demands require a better understanding of how the urban and rural areas can collectively address this concern. Urban areas are the demand centers. Of food, energy, and water. And rural areas are the suppliers of basic needs such as food, water, and energy to meet demand at the urban center. Food, energy, and water production are also interdependent. Food production and energy generation are dependent on water resource. Energy is needed to transport and fertilize crops. Food production and supply chains are responsible for huge energy demand. Crops are used to produce biofuel. While urban and rural systems are becoming interdependent through food, energy, and water nexus, linking supply side food, water, and energy nexus in rural with demand side food, energy, and water nexus in urban side will be the perspective for development planning at regional level. And since 2020, world is going through global pandemic by COVID-19. COVID-19 also affects the basic supply sector through a range of disruptions. 10 major disruptions relevant to water, energy, and food sectors are identified. Those are differentiated between whether disruption was transmitted through demand pattern or a supply shortage. In demand-induced disruption, the increased use of hygiene products and medical waste affect the water sector by deteriorating water quality and higher demand of water, and in consequence energy demand for water and reduced mobility, dietary change, reduced industrial operation, and quarantine regulation will create pressure on food production and water demand. Finally, some supply-induced impacts represent systemic disruptions. Mortality and mobility affect the labor supply across industries, particularly in food industry. At the same time, the postponements of major events can decrease the pressure on basic supply that also affect related infrastructure development. Conventionally, urban and rural development plan is considered in isolated manner. However, it is clear that the conventional approach can support resilient and sustainable urban-rural society, especially post-COVID-19. Therefore, it is critical to shift to sustainable city region planning that connects natural capital in rural with produced capital in urban area and enhance collective action and benefit sharing, which will lead to social, economical, and environmental sustainability at the city region level. So, supporting these theories, we are now working on a project under Asia Pacific Network for Global Research with a goal to develop urban-rural partnership framework to mitigate climate-induced water availability impacts on food, energy, and water security at regional level. The major collaborators of this project are Keio University, Japan, Visvesvaraya National Institute of Technology, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman Agricultural University, Bangladesh, Central University of Rajasthan, India, Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, Japan. And the study sites of this project are Nagpur, India, and Gazipur, Bangladesh. And we hope we can share some very interesting results during next event. Thank you very much for hearing my presentation. Thank you very much.
Dr. Mitola, thank you for your very conceptual presentation focusing on the food, energy, and nexus. And also, I'm very happy to hear that the implication of the COVID-19 on the food, energy, and nexus. Yeah, this is also very useful in the current situation of the COVID-19. Thank you for your presentation. So we have 3 more presentations. Next, I'd like to invite Ahushana Parvin. Presentation title is the People's Perception of Disaster-Induced Food Security and its Adaptation in the Vulnerable Coastal Community, Bangladesh. Yeah, presentation, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ashana Parveen, doctoral student, Asian Institute of Technology. Today, I will talk about the people's perceptions of disaster-induced food security and its adaptation in the vulnerable coastal communities of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is an agrarian country with many rivers along its 600-kilometer coastlines. Rice is the single most dominant crop cultivated in all seasons, with about 77% coverage of the total cropped area. About 1/3 of the cultivable land in Bangladesh lies in the coastal and offshore areas. The geographical location and funnel-shaped coastline make the country more vulnerable to natural disasters like floods, cyclones, droughts, river erosion, result in frequent damage and loss which have subsequent impact on household livelihood and food security in the region. The study area was in Noakhali, south central coastal regions of Bangladesh. This area experienced a series of erosion and accretion phenomena due to the Meghna River estuary. Therefore, to evaluate the impact of disaster on the household level food security, the present study collects semi-structured questionnaires based on household survey in 9 sub-districts of Bangladesh. The analysis was carried out using multiple logistic regression model. Statistical techniques such as frequency, percentage, mean, cross-tabulation, chi-square, and t-test were applied to analyze the data. Demographic characteristics of the respondents: 25% respondents has finished their primary educations. 56.7% responds they are living in the study area for their whole life. 60% farmers responded that they have the agricultural land ownership or rented land. Approximately 39% respondent use the agricultural product for their subsistence, and 39% respondent buy the food commodities from the market. The impacts of disaster in respondents' life. Natural disasters significantly affect the occupations of the respondents. That's why it reduces income and buying capacity of the respondents. When they don't have money and buying capacity, it affects the health status of the respondents significantly. But 56.3% respondents say that they don't receive any help during and after the crisis, where land ownership has significant relations in getting help from any organizations. While the status and food security has significant correlations in the study area, there is a significant relationship between the 2 variables like cropping pattern and food insecurity. So reasons for changing cropping pattern in the study area. I have found that disaster caused to change the cropping pattern in the study area, and rice production is less profitable, less agricultural productions. So types of food insecurity the respondents face in the crisis: consume less amount of food, not having enough money to buy food, having 1 meal in a day. And when there is a disaster that affect the food security, but before the food security, it affects the land use change. So what are the factors that affect the land use? We found that natural disaster is the main cause that affect the land use, and flood and cyclone is the highest, most important, most prominent disaster that affect the land use change in the study area. And waterlogging is the subsequent result after flood and cyclone. As the highest number of respondents are involved in agriculture, they lost their production that affect the food security or buying capacity of the respondents. The major crops cultivated by the farmers in the cropping pattern: still the rice, the staple crops, and the Boro rice is in the Department of Agricultural Extension, has their own small plots, so they do on that as an experimental basis. Impacts of disaster and land use change in food security. Disaster and land use change has significant relationship in triggering the food security in the study area. And so what are the adaptation measures they took in the food insecurity situations? The female of the household save the dry foods before the lean period starts, and according to FCT discussions, the household members, the family try to manage manage by selling the household assets to overcome the situations, and later the family decide to migrate to other places or borrow from the rich neighbors. Perceptions of disaster and food security. As we say, that female suffered a lot during the food insecurity situations. They consume less amount of food, no food at home, not having enough money to buy food, and having one meal in a day. So every food insecurity situations, the females are significantly sufferer for in every situations. And flood is the prominent disaster that forced the people to consume less amount of food, no food at home, and not having enough money to buy food, and collect alternative foods in different situations. And when there is the food insecurity situations and have land use change, then the respondents is taking less amount of food, no food at home, and not having enough money to buy food, and even they are having the one meal in a day. They have their migration to other cities and abroad. Major reasons for food security in the study area is natural disasters and that increase poverty in both sides. Livelihood diversification as an adaptation in the study area. Agriculture dependent people forced to change their profession for low wage income activities, and the household head tried to find the locally search for the extra income, minimize the family cost, and migration to other cities. These are the some adaptive activities the respondents do, like the three-wheelers, duck, they raise the duck, they prepare the mat, small business. And after the study, I found that the root causes of this study of this food insecurity situation is the limited access to resources, political power, decision-making process, and information, and that give the pressure to the respondents because they have lack of education, training, appropriate skills, and that trigger the unsafe condition for the respondents. And when the natural hazards like floods, cyclones, heavy rains, waterlogging comes, it creates a massive disaster in the community. In the community, as there is no record that how many people are migrating, locally migrating to rural to urban, and it's really hard to find the documentation. It was in the study area. Because all the focus because on the cyclone, the big cyclones like Ayla, Cedar, it happens and other large cyclones happened mostly in the south part of the region. So the region is more focused for the focused for the researchers, and get more attention to the donors and the policymakers' attentions. So after my study is one of the main purpose of my study is to data generations. So I create a data generation for the policymakers to have the attention in the study area, so that they can have some policy implications in the study area. A holistic management approach could be one. Community-based interventions, community-led post-disaster recovery policy, boost up the livelihood opportunities, more industrial areas, industry set up in that area. Thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any inquiry, please.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Afshana, to introduce the analysis of the impact of the disaster to the land use change and food security, as well as I think, and you analyze the perception of the people, how to adapt such kind of the disaster, and then finally you recommended you pick up some policy implication. This is very informative information by using the example of the Bangladesh. Thank you for your presentation. Next presenter, I'd like to introduce the approval pattern. Presentation title is the Policy Paradigm in Social Entrepreneurship for the Sustainable and Resilient Development. Yeah, presentation please.
Namaste and warm greetings. This is Apurva presenting paper titled Policy Paradigm in Social Entrepreneurship for Sustainable and Resilient Development. Growing as a global movement, social entrepreneurship has acclaimed attention from policymakers, development practitioners, researchers, scientific communities, and academia. Integrating sustainability across its models, its initiatives, and strategies, social entrepreneurship is also being considered to be having a transformative potential and solution for the economy, and even for addressing risks emerging out of climate change and humanitarian crisis. As such, we witness government support across the globe, which is very pivotal and is apparent from various national flagship programs and state initiatives. As governments have realized the importance of social entrepreneurship and acknowledged its contribution in addressing policy and social issues. Also in addressing various social economic challenges which the country is confronting with. And thus, the role of the policymakers' policy ecosystem becomes very, very crucial to facilitate or enhance public understanding, access to investment, building conducive and tailored ecosystems, etc., for fostering the growth and sustainability. With this, the paper basically aims to answer questions like what is the state of policy and legal ecosystem for social entrepreneurship across the globe, as well as the state of policy ecosystem, special reference to India. It also tries to look into how does this policy measures actually contribute as an accelerator or inhibitor to social entrepreneurship, and will put all this in context of social entrepreneurship as a pathway to sustainable development. Adopting an inductive approach and exploratory design, the paper undertakes a systematic review of extant literature through the content analysis method and attempts to critically appraise the policy measures and program initiatives in order to build a conceptual framework and determine the role of a supportive legal ecosystem in basically promoting social entrepreneurship with a special reference. From the overview of international and national policy ecosystem, few observations like the way in which social entrepreneurship is interpreted in legal and regulatory terms across the countries is very different. The definitions are not limited by any legal structure. There are multitudes of legal reforms, and also there are, in certain contexts, tailor-made legal reforms institutionalize the concept of SE. There is also increasing political willingness and support for fostering social entrepreneurship, which is considered to be having potential to provide solutions to the major problems by innovation and also leading towards social inclusion, social mobility, social cohesion, and helping in progressing global development goals. The findings include that there are no uniformity in laws and regulations of SE sector. There are, although, some committed policy frameworks to promote entrepreneurship. There have been specific policies in place to favor startups and small and medium enterprises. It has been also observed that there are no special provisions for social entrepreneurship as such. In context of country like India, we have a dedicated ministry or agency or institution which is championing entrepreneurship, like we have Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. There are deliberate schemes to promote formal entrepreneurial activity among specific groups of the population like youth, women, minorities, those in rural areas, etc. And the governments have taken steps to improve access to finance for their target groups. It has also taken steps to promote diffusion of technologies to small and medium enterprises. Furthermore, the entrepreneurship is embedded into national policies, into other major national policies and global goals. Priorities are identified and types of entrepreneurship that the country wants to encourage, for example, self-reliant India, and the Global Agenda 2030 is also mostly utilized upon to set specific targets or measurable objectives to increase activity. In conclusion, the researcher has observed that governments across the globe have felt the need and initiated with efforts for standardization of the process and regulation of the social enterprise sector. Policy initiatives have facilitated the mushrooming of huge number of micro and small ventures contributing to economy. The paradigm of entrepreneurship development has been shifting to skill development for fostering sustainable and resilient development. There are various policy initiatives and measures relating to entrepreneurship development which have been linked with the global goals and national priority issues to leverage transformative potential of social entrepreneurship sector. The entrepreneurship sector has also seemed to undergo unusual dynamism with focus mainly on economic development, digitalization, access to finance and market, etc. And as such, an in-depth understanding of social entrepreneurship processes, initiatives and their impact is the need of the hour for the policymakers so as to address the specific requirements or fill the existing gaps and further promote the resilience, sustainability, effectiveness and efficiency within the social entrepreneurship sector. There is a still need to discuss or identify the social in the national policies for entrepreneurship. Public policy can be a critical medium to demarcate what is social context entrepreneurship. With this, the researcher ends the paper by giving the future scope of research and states that by building upon the doctrinal analysis and drawing the intertwined linkages, the paper paves way for further empirical work to study in depth the specific phenomena of social entrepreneurship and policy or legal challenges in the pathway and propose strategies for resilience of SE. The practical and social implications include states that the great interest in entrepreneurship promotion for socio-economic and sustainable development on the part of legislatures, governments and scientific communities make social entrepreneurship practically an interesting and contemporary significant area of investigation. As such, the paper provides social entrepreneurs, specifically the policymakers and the leaders, the research much needed to further discuss, explore and pursue avenues in social entrepreneurship as a new way to address the old problems.
Okay, thank you, Apurva Patel, for the introducing a new approach by utilizing the social entrepreneurship for the development of the sustainable and resilient society. This is very unique approach and then the very informative information. Thank you for your sharing. Okay, I'd like to invite the final speaker, Shahida Afrin. Presentation title is GIS-based solid waste management of Rajshahi City Corporation. Presentation, please.
Hello everyone, I am Shahida Afrin. I am from Bangladesh. I have completed my graduation in Computer Science and Engineering from Rajshahi University of Engineering and Technology. I will represent my research on second International Symposium on Digester Reliance and Sustainable Development. So let's get started. My research topic is GIS-based solid waste management of Rajshahi City Corporation. My other two co-authors is Farjana Afroz and Dr. Mohammed Shahiduzzaman. We all know that waste management is a global environment issue which concerns about a very significant problem in today's world. The percentage of different categories of waste are organic material 70%, garden waste wood 6%, paper 9%, plastic, textile, rubber, leather 9%, metal, glass 3%, others 3%. From 2004 to 2010, waste generation trend is increased 100 tons per day. If it is not managed properly, it can affect public health, socio-economic condition, climate, and weather. Municipal solid waste management is one of the biggest challenges facing city planners around the world. The purpose of our research work was to develop a methodology based on GIS technology to optimize the waste collection system. The methodology has been applied to the Rajshahi City Corporation municipality based on real-life data. The solid waste management process is very complex because it involves many technologies and disciplines related to solid waste generation, control, handling, storage, collection, transfer, transportation, processing, and disposal. GIS has been used in this research. The use of the geographic information system to extreme complex spatial phenomena is recognized as one of the most promising approaches. GIS has been used successfully for a wide range of applications, including geology, natural resource conservation and management, risk management, urban planning, transportation, and various environmental modeling aspects. Okay, so our study area is Rajshahi district. It is situated in the northwest zone of Bangladesh between 24.12 degree and 24.32 degree north latitude and 88.15 degree and 88.50 degree east longitude. The district is a social, economic, and administrative center of the northern region of Bangladesh. There are total 30 wards under Rajshahi City Corporation, but at 30 wards become much larger for being study area. We have worked on 3 wards, 25, 27, and 28 as survey areas to achieve the right results and real purpose of the research. There are 60 waste collection bin points in the 3 wards of Rajshahi City Corporation. Van is using for house-to-house collection. There are 10 to 12 vans per ward for collecting waste. There are 10 tractors and 6 trucks. 6 trucks are used for collecting waste from secondary waste collection point to landfill site. Materials and method. An inventory questionnaire was prepared and used to gather information from the Rajshahi Development Authority, searching for appropriate evidence on solid waste generation, storage, treatment, and disposal. The data thus collected were gathered and analyzed to determine system sustainability for strategic solid waste management planning. Data entry, spatial data and attribute data are entered into a visualization and interpretation database through ArcGIS 10.6.1 program. This includes images, boundary lines, quantity of waste, vacant land, short distance road, etc. Mapping technique. The GIS technology is the central point of the proposed study. The technique used for this work consisted of 3 general measures. Phase 1 sets out a geographic network map of the research area as described above. Step 2 is devoted to the reallocation of waste disposal bins using the features of GIS space analysis. Step 3 ultimately consists of optimizing waste collection routing with a minimum of time and space. Spatial database development. In order to evaluate spatial data for the optimization of the waste collection system in the Rajshahi City Corporation, a spatial database within the GIS framework was created. The overview of this database is given in the previous section of this article. The primary origins of the spatial database development are analog maps from RDA, multimedia data from different official supplies, data obtained from fieldwork, on-site data collecting using GPS technologies. Okay, there is a flow chart which shows the spatial database development. Firstly, we have to survey, then allocate collection bins in the map, find out distance of one bin to another, find out the road buffer within 20 minutes, compare the existing proposed map, reallocate the dustbin in proposed position, intersect the road buffer and vacant land, find out the vacant land. Reallocation of waste collection bin. The research was carried out in the GIS settings using advanced spatial analysis function. The location of the waste collection bins in their newly introduced location was based on following criteria restriction. Redistribution of bins to the road network at one average distance of 50 meters from current bins to proposed bins require the positioning of more than one bin at the same intersection. In first map, this is existing dustbin of ward, and this is existing dustbin buffer in a buffer zone 20 meter wide. In figure 5, proposed dustbin ward. In figure 6, proposed dustbin buffer. Routing network analysis. Since the reallocation of waste collection contains an analysis of waste collection vehicle, routing has been carried out. The optimal route finding algorithm for ArcGIS is a modification of the classic disaster algorithm that solves the problem of optimal route selection on undirected, non-negative, weighted graph at a reasonable computational time. The key principle is to create a cost matrix comprising the difference between sources and destinations. Such lines are the pairs of curve exists. The cumulative travel time for the optimum route is the amount of the journey time for each section of the path plus the collection time for the waste disposal bins. The user of ArcGIS is in a position to specify all traffic conditions described above. The stop time for each waste collection container and the first and last collection bin. Result and discussion. The approach mentioned above was used to evaluate the waste management system for the municipality of Rajshahi City Corporation. Two specific optimization strategies have been considered. The redesign of the temporary storage network by the reallocation of bins to promote their collection, and optimum route analysis for the GIS model built using the proposed bins as stops. The reallocation of bins is based on distance movement and on the general aim to reduce the overall number of bins. Therefore, a maximum distance of 50 meters from each residence to the proposed new bin site has been permitted. In fact, the installation of new bins with a greater capacity to handle the same amount of waste means to the overall number of bins. And a total 22 bins in the proposed new locations were added to the existing 60 bins in wards 25, 27, and 28. Figure 4 indicates the possible reallocation of waste bins to the department under sustainable security. A higher priority for the distribution of new bins has been given to bin positions in the correct scheme and to crossroads in order to promote mutual recognition and storage of vehicle traffic. The strategy takes account of the placement of 22 additional larger bins. Conclusion. GIS as planning methods are used resources that can allow decision makers to identify the best available site for collection bins. GIS research involves the compilation of data from various sources in varying formats in order to construct a complete uniform database. The GIS data will then be revised periodically in order to represent the actual state of the region under investigation. Acknowledgement. We would like to take the opportunity to express our profound appreciation and heartfelt gratitude to Rajshahi Development Authority for their help in providing all the necessary secondary data and ward map of Rajshahi City Corporation. Here is the references. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shahid Afrin, to introduce the very innovative analysis by using the GIS to analyze the waste management in the one city on Bangladesh. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Then, so we have already finished the all 9 presentation here. So it's time for the question and answer or discussion. But before starting the question and answer, I'd like to summarize or review the 9 presentation. I think and among the 9 presentation, 6 presentation focused on the circulating ecological sphere and ecosystem by showing the different example or case study on this CCS approach. This is the 6th presentation. And then another 3 presentation. One is the people's perception on the disaster response, and then what kind of the impact of the disaster to the land's use change or human approach, activity, behavior. And then another one is the one introduction of the social entrepreneurship in the sustainable and resilient development. This is also another example. And then final presentation is the GIS analysis on the waste management in Bangladesh. This is all 9 presentation. And if you have any question or comment, please put on the, your comment in the chat box. But unfortunately, I cannot find any questions in the chat box. So as a chairperson, I'd like to ask one question to facilitate this discussion. At first, I would like to ask Dr. Bijan Kumar Mitra. Thank you for introducing the example of the local government case study in Japan on the rural and urban partnership. You mentioned that we had better provide incentive to strengthen the rural and urban partnership. But I think in order to promote this kind of the partnership, another issue is the legal system in Japan. So what kind of the legal system and law exists in Japan or not exist? I'd like to know the situation in Japan on the legal system or law to enhance this kind of the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and my colleague, Tetsu Koyama. Yeah, so thank you very much for your very important question. And it is really important to have this urban-rural partnership should be actually supported by the legal system, by the national government legal system, as well as the planning of the local government. The good thing in Japan is that national government actually provides some kind of legal supports to the local government. On the other hand, local government in some cases they have more power than the national government. They have this kind of decision-taking authority. They can, for their local government environmental issues, they can take any decision. They don't need to actually get approval from the national government. Like one example is the Kanagawa water conservation tax. It is not actually, it is initiated by the prefectural government. But national government give some kind of mandates to the local government, that local government can take any kind of decision that can actually help to improve their environmental conservation. So that's why this is the very unique thing in Japan. The national government with this kind of legal mandates to the local government give the kind of working environment for the local government so that they can take any kind of actions or plans that will be useful to improve their local environment as well as resilient society in their local context. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mitra-san, for your clarification. It is very good answer. Thank you. And also I have another question to the second presenter, Dr. Reja Pusarba and Malone. I think you kindly introduced the analysis in the Udon Tani. I think the key point is that dependency level you calculated, but based on your presentation, I cannot understand how to calculate it, this kind of dependency level. If you have any more explanation, please share it with us. Thank you.
Sorry, I heard just half of the question. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. Professor, did you ask that how can I analyze dependency levels? Okay, we have like straight questions to ask the perceptions. You know, each of the household have to refer to their own experience, and we were quite clear about what we mean by urban and peri-urban and you know, like rural areas. So we have quite clear you know, the definition for them to guide them to answers, so that we have straight question on that. And also you know, in terms of the actual analysis for the dependency in the social network analysis, we also have to cross some of the equations. Like sometimes they refer to you know, the urbanization, not the place. So we kind of like have to really dig down information in terms of like what are the local resources available, you know, around the areas. So it's really responding to their perceptions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for your clarification. I understand that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
And then I'd like to also ask my colleague, Dr. Rajesh Dasgupta. This is not really a question to your presentation, but I think in both, together with Tamasato University, IGES also focusing on the Udon Thani city to analyze some different indicators. I think I'd like to know in the future how both study will be integrated into one. If you have any future plan, please share it with us.
Thank you very much, Koyama-san. I really like that question, and I think it's very important that we continue this kind of research and collaborate, because there are, as you can understand, that some part, particularly when I did the modeling part, there are some very field level information that comes from Dr. Anne from Thammasat University, and there are some information which are very much land use dependent. So we need to kind of continue collaboration to understand the context, as well as to futurely, like in future, if we try to propagate this concept, so we need more robust results to support policies, because at present, as you can see, in Japan, we have the very data-rich countries. We can download the data by just a click, but in most part of Asia, we lack data, particularly ecosystem service data. So I think it's important that we have kind of a future long-term plan to kind of generate data and quantify the regional efficiencies, ecosystem carrying capacities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Dr. Vijayabhusha,
yes. Could I add on that, please, to really respond to Dr. Bijon mentioned about, you know, we have to create like platform. So we did the workshop as well, stakeholder workshop, but I didn't have time to present because it's only 8 minutes. The result was great. Our local stakeholders decided to have platform constitute for core members, which will be the province itself and the main city. And they would like to do MOU with periphery cities about water resources. And also we will be technical persons along with local universities, you know, like we are outsiders still. We based in Bangkok. And also there will be like governance, you know, like groups that will be the province um, because they work with a lot of like regional organizations, so they can cross-cut these issues. And we also talk about these CES concept should be integrated into the revised provincial plans, which will have direct impact on budgeting, to be short. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So next is, I think, and I'd like to ask reading or Poi and teams. I think, and I found the one message in the chat box. I think, and you have already received the one question from the some audience. So, but I think, and if you can share the questions and then what kind of answer you have already done, could you share it with us? I think, and you mentioned in the message. No, you mentioned the message in the chat box. Thank you. Yeah.
I received two questions from Mr. Nigel Downies from Vietnam. He asked me that the first question is the effect of the urbanization of a metropolitan city in the north of Hoa City to our research results. And the second question is about the fishing, because he assumed that the people who are involved in the fishing is decreasing, and he wondered the reason why. So for the first question, unfortunately, we expanded our research area into the south, the west, and the southwest of the Hoa City, not to the north of Hoa City. So that the effect of urbanization from the Nang City has not been concerned. And the second question, there are so many reasons for the status that the people who are involved in the fishing in the central of Vietnam are decreasing. But in our opinion, the main reasons was the urbanizations in the central of Vietnam, because they can have a job, they can earn more and more money in the metropolitan city with less fatal risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Poi and team. Yeah, I'd like to.
Thank you for your questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your clarification. Then, can I repeat my question? Because there is no common question from nobody. So I'd like to ask the question to the Dr. Samir. I think thank you for introducing the nice analysis in the India. Especially, I'm very happy to hear that you conducted the consultation meeting. And then so you, after the consultation meeting, I think, and you find some different level of the participation in the different area. If you have any different of the participation level in the different kind of the group or area who live. So if you have such kind of information, could you share it with us?
Yeah, so thank you so much for this question. In fact, it opens up a lot of new ideas and new perspectives, because the rural community and the urban community, they have very distinct approach towards the nature conservation. And because of this, we saw different levels of participation also when we were trying to interview people. And what happens is, in the rural area, the communities are more close to nature living, because they're directly dependent on the natural resources, maybe in water or maybe soil or for agriculture and forest, etc. But in case of the urban area, the idea of environment is mostly through the internet and the books and what they study through newspaper or the information. there's no direct contact with the environment. So the level of awareness may be high, but the participation it was not that really great. But then importantly, when we asked if they would like to contribute financially or by actually personally getting involved into nature conservation, the urban community were more keen to pay for the conservation rather than personally getting engaged into the nature conservation. Whereas in the rural community, they were more interested to involve themselves into the conservation activity, because they understand their dependence is more on the nature. So it's their responsibility to take care of the nature. So such variations, obviously, we could identify. But one of the major hurdle we had is this was in the summer's time when we conducted the study. So again, it was difficult. So I think a lot of challenges are there for the researchers also. When do we conduct the study? How do we ask the question? Rural communities, another example is rural communities were reluctant to answer the question because they felt that how it's going to help them. We will do the research, we will write the paper, we'll prepare the report, but then how will it help them answering? So they were not, initially they were hesitant to answer the questions. But when so we had to have kind of continued engagement with them, go again and again and ask them. And once they developed some kind of a confidence, then they were ready to answer us. As against in case of urban areas, it was more like, okay, you ask the question, get the answer and just go away. They are not really keen to even further ask the questions. They will answer only to direct to our questions and finish of the interview. They are not keen to take it further. Whereas in the case of rural area, they were keen because they knew that something important could be found out of the study and that may help them. So likewise, different perspectives, of course, we get when we interact with the community, and it depends on how they are connected with the nature.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting answer. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The next, I'd like to ask Dr. Priyanka Mitra.
Professor, I'm very sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
We are like a bit ahead of the time schedule. It's almost 5:20. I am sure the discussion was going great. I do not want to really interrupt, but I think the participants might require a short break before we start our technical session 17.
Okay.
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but
okay.
I think this discussion can go on in the networking lounge because it's open the whole time. Okay. So please, Professor, thank you so much to both our professors, Professor Kuyama and Professor Mitra, for such an engaging discussion. I think we had 9 presentations, but the discussions were much more interesting. Thank you to the participants as well for such engaging discussions and promptly replying to the chats and the questions that were directed to you. So I'd like to, with the permission of chairs, I'd like to end this discussion. I think it can go on in the networking lounge. And Professor Kuyama, please, you're welcome to join the networking lounge, as well as the participants. Please join the networking lounge. I think the discussion can be further taken there as well. Thank you very much. So now we'll be taking a short break. I think just 9 minutes left to be very much exact. And after that, we will be heading for technical session 17. So thank you very much to the chairs as well as the participants. See you in 9 minutes exact. Thank you.